Hey everybody, hold on one sec while I get everything going. Hope all is well with everyone.
Tell me pretty lies, look me in the face, tell me that you love me, even if it's fake.
What is going on? How are you doing? Are you ready for some Freaky Friday news? I'm also giving an update on my weekly tarot readings. I got to thinking, when I do my live readings, what I do is I have all my tarot decks laid out, which I do right now, and I kind of go on, and it's always when I do a tarot reading, that's how I work it. I go on my instinct of what deck is calling to me to read. Like if so and so came into chat and asked for a reading, I'll look over my deck and I know which deck is calling for me to tell me to read, right? Or to use to read. And in my weekly tarot, I don't do that. But I'm going to start my weekly tarots back up for all signs. And I'm going to use that same method. I'll still do my, general reading, love life, social life, home life, and work, financial, and a bit of advice. But I'm gonna let my instinct take over with that and do like I do in my normal tarot readings when I read for people. So, with that being the case, that's my update for that anyway. So let's get into some freaky news Friday, shall we? All right, so this first story, let me share my screen first. There we go. So this first story comes from Phantoms and Monsters. If you haven't got their webpage, check them out. I'll put the link down in the description box. Talking about a retail worker who had a run-in with not a black-eyed children, but a black-eyed adult. Let me read the story to you. I work in retail. I'm checking the sweet old couple out at the register. We're having a wholehearted, typical retail store conversation, speaking to the customer. And then, boom, I look into the husband's eyes for the first time. This man has jet black eyes. The store goes silent. No one's speaking. I'm overcome with an overwhelming feeling of dread. I wasn't exactly terrified. I was more enchanted, entranced. Again, the whole store is dead silent. It's as if I've been griped from my reality. Let's try that again. It's as if I've been gripped from my reality and brought into this old man's dimensions. I wish I could tell you guys I looked at my surroundings to see why everyone went quiet, but I was so overcome with a plethora of emotions, staring into this man's completely black eyes, that I just physically couldn't look away. And then, just like that, the man leaves with his wife. I handed him his receipt. He takes his things and leaves. I was out of breath. I had to take my break early. I'm ashamed to admit that I'm almost ready to cry. I literally never have been through anything, and I mean anything like that ever. I did some research when I got home and I found out a lot. She found out a lot about black-eyed children, basically. But she said what was strange about this situation was that the man had to be in his late 60s, early 70s. What could this mean? It's just so hard to imagine a man casually wearing black contact lenses, especially at that age, right? But these weren't enlarged pupils. There was not 1 ounce of white in his eyeballs. and that feeling of dread, the silent store, and the time that seemed to go on forever. This had to be an encounter. I know what I saw, and I promise you the story is 100% true. I'm worried no one will believe me. And it's signed from Joe. So what does this mean, guys? I mean, the only other time that I've seen black eyes like that is in Supernatural, right? When the demons come, that's what their eyes go to, right? But she's right. You hear so much about black-eyed children. And do the black-eyed children grow up? Do you know what I mean? Have you guys had any encounters or heard of anything like this before? I know I haven't. I haven't whatsoever. So what do you guys think? Why can't I get the... Why is it not... There we go. Kind of. There we go. So what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below or in an email. I want to know if anybody's ever had this encounter like this. I've never heard of anybody having a black-eyed adult encounter until this story. But obviously she went through something. I mean, when I'm reading that, when I read it earlier, I could feel the emotion in her, in the email. But yeah, I would definitely like to get your take on that and let me know, would you? All right, let's go on to the next, shall we? This one also comes from Phantom and Monsters, but it was, the following account was reported to Tobias Wayland at the Singleton Fortune Society. I know I'm saying that wrong, but if you're into the weird and wild, definitely check out the Singular 14 Society because they got some really cool stories. Anyway, let me see, make sure everything's on the screen right. Okay, so the Singular 14 Society was contacted recently by a witness who said that she was out walking her roommate's dog just before midnight on January 9th when she noticed a tall, thin figure shuffling towards her. The witness, who asked that she be referred to only as Kel in this article, was instantly unnerved by her experience, which she described to investigator Tobias Wayland in a series of email correspondences. My roommate got a dog, and I was helping by taking him out to go to the bathroom. In Albany Park neighborhood, it's in Chicago. I was also going to go for a long walk because the dog was restless. As I started to walk down the sidewalk, I looked down the sidewalk ahead of me. Then I saw a very tall, skinny, all-black figure about 7 to 8 feet tall. It was shuffling towards me very slowly. I stopped and stared, trying to convince myself it was a person, but I could not make out any arms. Or it's as it had long arms being tucked behind itself. I couldn't make out a round-head shape either. I instantly got scared. I didn't have a good feeling. I got creeped out and I fled back to my apartment. Looking over my shoulder, it was still there while I was heading back. The initial email read, I just wanted to tell someone. I'm not sure what I saw, but it was definitely unsettling. Kel reported that she looked at it for about a minute, but couldn't make out what it was, and got a very unsettling feeling about the tall, dark figure slowly shuffling towards her. At that point, she pulled the dog along and ran in the direction of her apartment. I glanced out over my shoulder 2 times to see if it was still there, and the figure was walking slowly in my direction. Not aggressively coming towards me, but it was facing me, watching me. And I got an eerie feeling that I should get back inside, said Kel. Wayland asked Kel to describe the figure in more detail if possible. It was definitely a humanoid, solid shadow figure, she said. It wasn't transparent or anything, just black, skinny, and very tall, and it had weight to it as it shuffled. I could not see any eyes or a face. The head was not a round silhouette. I saw 2 legs, like I could not make out any pants or shoes. Excuse me, no clothes, no arms dangling at the torso side, but there appeared to be something being tucked away behind them, just like a dark, black, solid figure. According to Cal, the figure was under the street lamp on St. Louis Avenue and Sunnyside Ave in Chicago. On the northwest side of St. Louis sidewalk just across from Sunnyside. I was on the southwest side of the St. Louis sidewalk on the other side of Sunnyside. I was very confused why I could not see clothes or features beside a mid-sized head and 2 arms and no legs. And 2 legs and no arms. Or some arms or something tucked behind the figure. Just black, she added. I feel like the figure should have been better illuminated because it was right underneath the street light. Cal told Waylon that while she had experienced a couple paranormal events in the past and was perhaps sometimes privy to psychic intuition, she's never had any experiences with physically seeing UFOs or otherworldly apparitions, not even ghosts. Definitely felt nuts after seeing this one, though, she said. Almost 3 weeks prior to Kel's sighting, a Chicago couple reported a large, thin man appearing out of Schiller Woods, whose eyes were huge. They almost looked like a praying mantis eyes, just jet black. So, kind of bulbous and set back a little bit, maybe? Schiller Woods is roughly 10 minutes west of the intersection where Kel's sighting took place. And I'll go ahead and share this over here so you guys can see. So apparently St. Louis Ave and West Sunnyside Ave is right here. And well, apparently there's a park somewhere around here. This is where the you see the street light. This is where the encounter took place. So crazy. Any of my Chicago people out there ever seen this or heard of this? Maybe you've been hearing about it? Let me know, will you? I'm interested in this. I mean, when I'm reading it, I get the feel like it was the Slender Man. But not so tall. Slender Man's usually a lot taller. But it's damn well interesting. So I wonder if like over here where this green patch is, because it said 10 miles away. I don't know. I'm not good with, I know it says 10 miles west of the intersection. I don't know if that would be 10 miles or not. But pretty cool. If anybody's around this area and knows about this, let me know. I'd love to have a free-for-all chat and bring you up on panel or even give you the Skype number to call in and see, talk about this. If you've heard anything, have you seen anything? Pretty cool indeed. All right, so on to the next. What else we got here for Freaky News Friday? Of course, a Bigfoot sighting, right? Let's go ahead and get rid of that. So this one comes from Phantom and Monsters too. They've had a really good plethora of stories here for the last couple weeks. So anyway, this is a massive 9-foot shaggy Bigfoot up close on Vermont Street. Since I've lived in Vermont since I was 17 years old, I've never heard of Bigfoot nor seen anything like it in my life. I've seen black bears stand on their hind legs, take a few steps, but always return to their four-legged walk. I married my husband in 1967, so this is definitely an older couple, and had 3 children from 1970 to 1972. There were only 2-lane roads in the state except for the Interstate I-89, which goes from I-91 in Massachusetts to I-89 and winds its clear way to Canada. We live in Windsor, Vermont, centered next to the Connecticut River, nestled against Mount Ascutney. It's a truly beautiful place to live. The people are friendly, even with their New England quirks. It's a place I've lived in Massachusetts, so I know about those quirks. It's a place you'd bring up your children, let them walk to and from school, never had to lock your cars or your houses, for everyone knew everybody for generations. But one year changed my life forever. It says, you see, my husband was a hunter. We drove to Richford, Vermont, to his cousin's house, and he and his cousin would hunt buck or doe for the 2 weeks we stayed there. He knew every track on an animal would leave, and enjoyed the sport. So on that fateful afternoon, coming back from Reading, Vermont, it was a typical day, maybe 80, nice breeze. We were talking when I approached a long swinging corner. I had slowed a bit, but when I reached a straight, there was an animal in the center of the road. I came to a stop just yards from it. We both thought it was a bear as it was hunched over with its back to us. I honked the horn a couple of times, but to no avail. The creature continued doing its thing until it started standing up and up and up. It had to have been 9 foot tall, maybe 800 pounds. My husband said reddish brown shaggy fur. Then it turned around. Neither of us could speak as it eyed us. It was very apparent that whatever it was intelligent. It was a male. I wonder how they knew that. Okay. It was a male, but the largest animal I'd ever seen close up, and my husband was as shocked as I was the sight. Oh, wait a minute. That did not make sense. It was a male, but the largest animal I'd ever seen close up. And my husband was as shocked as I was at the sight of the thing, not being disrespectful. It eyed us for maybe a minute or two, looking directly into each of our eyes, then turned, took a step towards the side of the road, and in one step, it was on the grass. On the other step, it was going into what the hunters call pucker bush, because it had thorns. Oh, like a pricker bush. I'm thinking a thorn bush. A pucker brush, because it had thorns 2 inches long or better, and it made you pucker for the pain it inflicted. Then the animal was just gone. So it took one step. It was in the middle of the road. It took one step towards, that's a long stride, from the middle of the road to the grass. I don't care what road you're on. I mean, she said, she didn't say that she was on any of the highways. She was on a 2-lane road, but still, that's a big stride. So it goes on to say, we sat there, and I don't even know how long afterwards, but a car came up behind us, and I had to start moving. We didn't speak of it until the next day. We were trying to wrap our minds around it. Years later, I came across a book by Ivan Sanderson about a large humanoid animal named Sasquatch, or Yeti, or Bigfoot. And that's when I realized that's what I'd seen. I rushed home to show my husband what I found out. And from then on, we watched the sides of the roads and looked in fields, but never saw the creature or others again. I'm truly thankful for what we saw that day, as it made me realize that there is more to this world than I could ever imagine. We never told anyone about our encounter till years later, feeling like no one would believe us anyway. Signed, SF. So what do you guys think? I mean, do you guys believe in Bigfoot, Sasquatch, Yeti, whatever, abominable snowman? I believe in the one from Rudolph. But anyway, do you guys, I do believe in Bigfoot. I believe there are animals in this world that are undiscovered. But I think Bigfoot, along with Mothman, along with Nessie. Well, I don't know with Nessie. Nessie, there are hiding spots under there that Nessie could be living in. Yeah, I believe they're interdimensional. I believe Bigfoot protects the forest. Mothman, I believe, warns you that something big is going to happen, big and disastrous, could happen. Maybe it's telling you to change, something in your routine for that not to happen, or the city or government to change for it not to happen. Yeah, so what is your guys' takes on that? Leave me a comment or, type in the chat room wherever you're watching this. And, but the biggest thing is, come over to YouTube if you can, Shadows of the Moon, and leave me a comment or even write my email. I would love to hear from you. All right. So what is the next? So this comes from the New York Post. UFO sightings triple in New York City in 2019. That's crazy, right? It says ET can't just quit New York City. At least according to 35 New Yorkers who reported UFOs in 2019, 3 times the 12 who called in close encounters the year before. Manhattan and Queens had the most believers, with 12 sightings in each borough, according to the data from the National UFO Reporting Center. Brooklyn logged 8 sightings, and Staten Island and the Bronx just 2 or 1 respectively. Otherworldly tourists traveled to and from Gotham in a variety of craft, including silver cigar-shaped space vehicles and bright green orbs. Then apparently was not a lime-colored cab in Midtown. In addition to, even in this day and age, it seems like people they're scared to tell that they believe. And that's, if you've watched my channel for a while, that's not, that's what my channel's all about. I want some place where people can come and not get judged for what they believe in. It's a strange world out there. Let's see. But from this article, you can tell, the writer wants to write about it, but they're scared to put out what they feel, so they got to make a joke about it, if that makes sense. In addition to star bright white dots appearing over Prospect Park, according to reports to the Washington-based center, one Brooklyn resident, Catherine Kocher King, posted a 30-second video of an orange ball bouncing around the sky. And that's what this picture is about. It is, obviously it's not the video. They don't show the video. They show the picture of it bouncing. Did anyone else see this last night in the sky about midnight? This is what she posted on her Facebook page, October 20th of last year. Any idea what could it be? Because that's what we do, right? We take these videos or these pictures, and if we don't know what they are, we post them on video, say, hey, anybody out there know what the hell this is? a little freaked out right now, so you can give me some advice. She also attached a link to her report to the center. Another Kings County encounter involved 6 floating craft flashing red and white lights on December 12th at 5 a.m. This is not the first time I've seen alien craft outside my window at home in Brooklyn, the person posted. The first time was in October, and I swear I almost got abducted. Another Brooklynite claims he spotted 4 silver cigar-shaped objects in the sky of September 20th at 3:30 p.m. I looked out my window and I saw a very clear trail of exhaust in the sky, he said. I happen to live in the area where the airplanes regularly fly on a few set routes, and I've gotten to know their pace, speed, and general flight paths. There are also frequently helicopters flying slightly lower in the sky than planes. These crafts were moving at a remarkable speed. In Queens, a motorist says he stopped for a red light at 112th Street and North Boulevard in Corona on July 22nd at 3:55 p.m., looked up and was transfixed by a flat saucer-like object that released bright green orbs. The state saw a 52% increase in UFO sightings to 164 last year from 108 in 2008. We are being visited routinely by UFOs, insists Peter Davenport, the director for UFO Reporting Center. From my vantage point, it's a daily event. Governments are lying to the respected citizens on this. It's the same old thing where we're not going to hear anything until they're ready to tell us. We can speculate. We can guess. We know what we see, right? I mean, personally, I've never seen a UFO. I've never seen... And people ask me all the time, well, you've never seen this stuff. How can you believe? Because I've seen other stuff that makes me believe that it's just not a normal world. A normal world that we're grown up to believe is normal, if that makes sense. I have no clue if that makes any sense. But that's how I feel. I've seen a few things that, and I'm a witch. Now, mind you, I will say that I'm very scientific. I research the hell out of things. Do I go down rabbit holes? I try not to. Because I'll be sitting there for hours researching and just keep diving down that rabbit hole till I find an answer, or I sit there and say, all right, I got to stop this. As for, I've done magic and it's worked. I think a lot of it is your intention. It has a lot to do with it. It's kind of like in Practical Magic, if you ever watch that movie, when she takes his badge, says, oh, sorry guys, if you heard that, but where she takes his badge that's in the shape of a star and says, how does she say it? You put all your belief basically into the star that you can stop criminals in the tracks. This doesn't have any powers, magical powers to it, right? But you believe it does. It's kind of like that. When you believe something so much, you can make it happen. Kind of like when people are like, why don't I have money? Why am I poor? Why? Because deep down inside, this is my belief. I'm just telling you. My belief is the reason you can't make money and keep money and all that. Deep down, somewhere, something's affected you throughout your life that you feel you're not worthy of that. That's why people with money have that confidence. They feel worthy of that money. Where, we're just working paycheck to paycheck because we don't feel we're worthy of that money. Just my thoughts. Anyway, let's go on to the next. The Ghost of Gladstone Villa. I believe this is out of the UK. Could be wrong. This, again, is all Phantom and Monsters. It says the following is a creepy account that has made the rounds in various forms over the years. The author's name is Andrew Dexter and was forwarded to me by a colleague in Canada. I have been involved with a fair number of haunting investigations and remote viewings through South Wales, so this particular location and activity is familiar. What you are about to read is a true story. This is a genuine case that took place many years ago. It really did happen to me and my family, and I would like to share it with you, as my story needs to be heard, or needs to be told. My family and I lived in a large property called Gladstone Villa in the former mining town of Bargoed in the Caerphilly County Borough of South Wales throughout the 1970s. And if I butchered that, I am so sorry. I don't mean to. We experienced many unusual phenomena that simply defied any rational explanation, like footsteps in the main bedroom that would be heard on a regular basis, mainly in the evening, but sometimes during the day, when we would all be sat downstairs watching television. One of us would turn the volume down to hear the footsteps more clearly. We also had some minor poltergeist activity. I witnessed electrical cables being pulled by unseen forces from the upstairs, and my grandfather said he had a glass bottle thrown towards him as he entered the main bedroom, just missing him. I saw him with a broken glass in his hand, and he told us this. There was also the occasional sightings, so rare, in fact, that all of the years I was living at Gladstone Villa, I didn't see any manifestations or apparitions, but my mother saw at least one on 3 occasions, as well as my grandfather. There were 4 family members that lived in Gladstone Villa. My maternal grandparents, William and Rita Higgs. William, who preferred to be known as Bill to his family and friends, was a former miner who worked at Bargoed Colliery in 1950s. Then there were my parents, Douglas and Caroline Dexter. They met at the bake house in Baldwin Street in I don't know if it's Bargoed or Bargeode. They dated for 3 years before, if somebody knows, please correct me down below, please. They dated for 3 years before they married on April 1st, 1968 at 2 p.m. So it wasn't such a foolish thing to do after all, but the Beatles were number 1 on the charts with Lady Madonna. Very apt. They didn't get a place of their own. They stayed at Gladstone Villa with my grandparents, Bill and Rita, and I was born in August of 1969. It was soon after that my mother told me that the strangest activity began. My mother said it all started off rather quietly, with little taps here and there, but hardly noticeable. Nothing to be concerned about. It didn't take long for the activity to increase, though. I was still a baby at the time. It all started in September of 1969, so my mother told me about how it got worse. She said the family heard what sounded like somebody jumping down from the attic and onto the landing floor. Naturally, thinking this was somebody trying to break in, they went to see what's going on, and when they got upstairs, they found nothing. Nobody was to be seen. But they found the hatch to the attic was open. But it was very curious indeed. Whatever it was eventually occupied itself in the main bedroom. which instantly belonged to my grandparents, Bill and Rita. And it didn't take long for the spirits to make its presence felt. May an evening footsteps be heard in walking around the room. Many an evening. Sorry, it's got some. Many an evening footsteps could be heard walking around the room. There were typically signs of poltergeist activity. When I was still a baby, my mother said she checked my cot and she saw that the pillow was torn right in half. I don't think I was in it at the time. Another occasion, the family went out for the day. When they got back, they found that the furniture in the living room had been turned upside down. There was no signs of break-in and nothing was missing or no forced entry. See, that would freak me out. The furniture being flipped upside down, that would freak me out. One evening, my mother went to the main bedroom to get my father up for the night shift at the bakehouse. She said she saw that his slippers were thrown out on the landing. But more was to come. When she went inside, she saw that the ironing board was carefully placed on my father's torso as he slept. Then she managed to wake him up and when he came to, he was astonished to see the situation he was in. My father Douglas was quite suspicious of my grandfather Bill, thinking it was my grandfather doing it. But as time passed, he realized it wasn't him doing it at all, and he had become convinced that it was a genuine haunting. At some point, Bargoed police were involved for some reason. They checked the attic but found nothing, but they suspected that it was my father, Douglas, playing pranks on a family from the bakehouse. My parents separated and my father left Gladstone Villa sometime in 1972. But it wasn't because of what was going on at the property, it was just a breakdown of the marriage. I have no memory of my dad living at Gladstone at all, but he would come to see me every Saturday to take me to places. And I enjoyed going to the Cameo Cinema in Bargoed with him. They finally divorced on the 25th of April in 1975. This famous Scottish group at the time was the Bay City Rollers, and they were number one on the British charts with Bye Bye Baby. Again, very apt. And almost amusing in the sad situation. As I got older, I experienced the phenomena for myself. I too heard all the footsteps in the main bedroom. I remember my grandfather, Bill, looking at the ceiling and pointing up, trying to point out just exactly where the footsteps were coming from. He said, "He's by there. And he's by here now." I also witnessed the electrical cables being pulled from the television, and my grandfather, Bill, would be angry just in case it caused any serious damage. The activity got so bad that we slept downstairs with the lights on all night, as we were too scared to sleep upstairs. Only my grandfather Bill slept in that room. He was the only one who was supposedly brave enough. But my grandmother Rita knew that he was just scared because every time he would go upstairs, he would whistle a tune. My grandfather Bill claimed to have had an unpleasant experience in that room. One night he was alone when all of a sudden he said he felt a presence there. Heard what sounded like floorboards creaking by the door. Then he was paralyzed on the bed. He just couldn't move. Not even shout out to call out to us to help him. I also had an unpleasant experience while alone in that room. I still remember it well. The bedroom light was on as I was scared of the dark. It was very quiet. I was lying on my left arm, side faced the window that overlooked the street we lived in, Cardiff Road, when all of a sudden I felt something pounce on my bed. I heard the bed springs just at once. I heard the bed springs going just the once. So like a pounce, like a cat or a dog jumping on the bed. I was naturally too scared to look straight away, being a child at the time, but when I did, I eventually looked. There was nothing there at all. I went downstairs to tell my mother and grandparents, and they came up to see what was going on. When we got there, we saw 3 distinct paw marks, that of an animal, but it never happened again. Mrs. Ivy France was a family friend, more of a friend to my grandmother Rita. She was well in her 50s by the 1970s, and she enjoyed a game of bingo at the old people hall next to Gladstone Villa. She used to read the tea leaves from a cup, but was rather skeptical when my grandmother told her Gladstone Villa was haunted. I still remember Ivy now going up into the main bedroom, looking around and saying it was the vibration from traffic outside on the main road causing it. But her opinion was soon changed when she experienced it for herself when she visited one evening. It was then the local press was suggested, but my grandmother Rita quickly declined for fear of ridicule. But then a local medium was suggested, one that Ivy France knew of. His name was John Matthews. When John Matthews arrived, he started to ask the family questions, then began by challenging the spirit to perform by knocking on the ceiling, and the entity immediately knocked back to him. At some point, the medium John went into a trance to try and make contact with it. He failed to get a name, but was later confirmed the obvious, that there was indeed a presence there, and it was an earthbound spirit. A priest by the name of Graham Jones was also called to Gladstone Villa. He blessed the property, and after a few prayers, he duly left, and it was quiet for a few short months. After that, the activity returned. The footsteps continued, as well as the noises and the bang sound of dragging, only this time it started to show itself. One night, we were watching television when my mother Caroline just happened to look to her left, where my grandmother was, reading a book when she saw the full solid figure of a monk standing behind the sofa that my grandmother was on, near the doorway. My grandfather and I didn't see it as we were watching television, but she later described what she saw in detail, which was a monk with typical brown hair, or brown habit, complete with hood over the head so she didn't see his face. She said it was there for a few short moments, and then it was gone. There was another sighting, but this one took place in the daytime. My mother and I were in the front room. When my mother went over to the sofa to get something, she looked to her left and saw the confused expression on her face. Or I saw the confused expression on her face. I didn't see this as I was behind the door that was wide open, obscuring the hallway, but she later told me that she saw the face of an elderly man with a shock of white, wavy hair looking into the room from the hallway that led up to the bedroom. Fred Davis was another family friend. He was my grandfather Bill's workmate from Bargoed Colliery. Fred was a tall, slim man who would always wear a flat cap, glasses, and smoked homemade cigarettes, which he kept in his mouth as he spoke to us. Every time he would visit, he would sit in his favorite chair by the open fire. One day he came up. It was quiet. I was playing on a sideboard quite happily when all of a sudden there was a very loud bang. Just once, it was so loud that it made Fred duck his head, and I ran to my mother, Caroline, for safety. When it was all quiet again, we went up to the stairs to see what had happened. My grandfather Bill would be the first to go, and I would be the last. When we got there, we could not find anything that could account for that loud bang. Fred later told us that he ducked his head because he thought it was going to come through the ceiling. It was like someone had dropped a large, heavy trunk. I can't express how big it sounded. My grandfather Bill always liked to look out the landing window over the street of Cardiff Road, facing Beauregard Town Center. On this occasion, Fred Davies joined him. He said he felt something brush past him. When he looked, there was nothing there. We had the ghost for so long that my grandmother Rita gave it a nickname. She called it Johnny. My grandfather Bill would mock it by shouting out the name to get a reaction, but nothing would happen. Every time my grandmother would watch TV show Songs of Praise on Sunday, Johnny would start as if he would take any exception to religious music being played. The same thing would happen when my grandfather Bill would play his records and LPs, particularly the 70s band Slade. One occasion, my granddad Bill played their album Old, New, Borrowed, and Blue from 1974 in the bedroom. Johnny would turn the electric off. This would annoy my granddad Bill. Yet another family friend, Derek, he would come to experience the phenomena. One night, Derek came up to paint the living room door green for us. My mother was cooking sausage in the kitchen when the noises would start. This would quite naturally frighten Derek into stopping for a while until the house noises stopped. But Derek was so determined to finish his job that he started, and he did so. Both my mother and grandfather once claimed to have heard a baby crying in the main bedroom. But as I didn't hear this at the time, I took very little notice of this. When we left Gladstone's villa in the summer of 1978, when two local businesses by name of John and Aldo Ricci bought the property, and the name was changed to Park Villas when John's son moved in, but he made no claims that the property was haunted. Curious. It was eventually converted into a hotel, and the name was changed again to the Park Hotel. Then the proprietor was a Londoner by the name of Roland Butler, but he had also made no claim that the place was haunted. It wasn't until new management took over the rumors surfaced that it was actually haunted. The name was changed to Reds when the McBurney family took it over. On our last night in Gladstone Villa, we still experienced things. Our belongings were packed in a black plastic bin bags in the hallway. We were getting ready to settle down for the night, ready for the big move the next day. The lights were on. My granddad was upstairs when it all started up again. We heard the bags in the hallway being thrown around. Then the old-fashioned round doorknob was being turned, as if someone was trying to get in, but it didn't. This frightened my mother, so she called out to my grandmother Rita in panic. I had my 40th birthday in August of 2009 at Red's Park Hotel, for old time's sake. And it was the staff who told me of their own personal experience, particularly the barmaid Debbie. They said there were sightings in the bar and in room 5, footsteps, and an eerie feeling, and they didn't like going down the cellar as they heard noises down there, especially Debbie's husband Neil, who thought someone was trying to break in. I did some research into the history of the property in the whole of the Cardiff Road area, and I found some very interesting things indeed. I discovered from a local newspaper archive that Bargoed Library that Gladstone Villa dates back to the 1900s. I found out the family lived there in 1924. The Kimmett family, their baby son Alvin Rollins Kimmett, died at Gladstone Villa in 1924. He was just 4 months old, according to the family notices of the South Wales Echo of that year. This explains the baby my mother and grandfather heard. It makes sense now. The Jones family lived there during the Second World War. I discovered a letter written by Henry Jones from Gladstone Villa. His son was taken prisoner. The Mills family were also there at some point. Edgar Mills also claimed that Gladstone Villa was haunted. Maybe this was the old man my mother saw. I also discovered that there was a monastery in Baldwin Street where my parents worked. This explains the monk my mother saw, and a priest hid is said. A priest hide? I don't know what that means. And a priest hide, maybe that's his last name, is said to be an old listed building that dates back to the 17th century that has tunnels leading up to the local villages of Gelger, where there's an old church called St. Catwig's, and Nelson, where there is an old manor house called Lancatch. Flower Manor, which is well known to be haunted and was featured in Most Haunted. It was once owned by the Pritchard family. I've seen that episode. What I've said here is the truth, and I wouldn't share this if I couldn't possibly back this up. And I challenge any hardened skeptic to stay there. I can assure them that they will most certainly indeed question their own belief system. And that I have no absolute doubt at all whatsoever. I'm deadly serious when I'm about that. And I'm quite sincere. I wouldn't risk losing my credibility. Check it out. The property is still there in Cardiff, Road and Bargood. Google it. I have used real names as I have nothing to hide, and every detail I share can be verified. Most of the people I mentioned above have now died, but those who are still with us still remember it and still talk about it. My mother and I wouldn't want to go through that again. Wow. First of all, what a long letter. But what a story. What a story. That is crazy. And there's one thing left. I don't know if you guys remember Uri Geller. I thought this was weird. Not weird, but I hadn't heard that name in a long time. If you don't know who Uri Geller is, he could bend spoons with his mind. Whether you believe it or not, that's what his gig was back in, I think, the early 80s. Maybe mid-80s. I'm not sure. I can't remember, but I was young. I remember that. It could have even been the 70s. No, I think it was 80s that he was around. But anyway, he could bend spoons with his mind, right? So to speak. So apparently Britain has appealed for weirdos. And spoonbender Uri Geller applied. London. Spoonbender celebrity psychic Uri Geller, 73, has applied for a job at the British government in response to their advert for misfits and weirdos, saying no other candidate would possess his power. And that's him today, apparently. Oh, no, yeah, because this was Uri Geller jesters during an interview at the Uri Geller Museum, August 14, 2018. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson's most senior advisor, Dominic Cummings, advertised government jobs for assorted weirdos in a recent blog complaining that civil service did not have enough genuine cognitive diversity. In a cover letter beginning, "Dear Dom," Geller said that his career as an entertainer has been the perfect mask for his work in espionage. Ooh. While many have doubted my abilities, my achievements cannot be dismissed as trickery or illusion, said the Israel, who became famous in the 70s for performing telekinetic feats on television, such as bending spoons without touching them. In my intelligence work, I assisted with Operation Desert Storm, helped to locate secret tunnels in North Korea, and used my skills to erase crucial diplomatic discs on the way to Moscow, he said. Geller recently said he had been had used his powers to help Johnson win last month's election by giving his aides a spoon enthused with positive energy. Perhaps you could have used my abilities in your dealings with Michael Barnier, he added in his letter referring to Brexit negotiations with the European Union. However, Cummings and Johnson might not be impressed with Geller's previous Brexit involvement. After he called upon Britons in March 2019 to stop the process altogether by twice daily bursts of mass telepathy. Asked by the Reuters whether he thought his paranormal powers would give him an unfair advantage over other candidates, he said, "Yeah, absolutely. I don't think any of the people who filled out the form have any psychic powers, but I'm not 100% sure," he said. And that, my folks, with that being it, is your weekly news, your freaky weekly news. So what do you guys think? First of all, I want to know why Britain was calling out weirdos. Why were they looking for weirdos? Seriously. Do they know something that we don't? That's crazy, right? So let me know, guys, what do you think about these stories? What do you think's going on in the world? Are we just crazy or what? Probably. That's how it is. But anyway, guys, if you have any weird stories, you know what to do. Send them to my email. They're in the link below. Yeah. And if you want any of these links to these stories to read for yourself, let me know and I will send them to you or I will answer your, sorry, it's late. I'm tired. But I wanted to get this out. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you will stick around and see some other videos of mine. And I will see you next time for Freaky News Friday. Bye, guys. Thanks for...
Tell me pretty lies, look me in the face. Tell me that you love me, even if it's fake.